Welcome to Rewild by Design, a podcast for women in midlife who are ready to burn the rule book, drop the good girl mask, and come home to who they really are. I'm your host, Marissa, a human design and Gene Keys mentor and your guide in this wild woman era. Get ready for bold conversations, raw truths, and the kind of insights that'll shake you awake. Because midlife isn't the end of your story. It's the point where you finally get to write it your way. Welcome back to Rewild by Design. I'm your host, Marissa, and today's a little bit different. I don't know how long this will be because I can yap for a long time, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how I got here, specifically to Rewild by Design, and kind of the journey along the way of how I found human design, how it's helped me, and a little bit about why I share the work that I do. Before we get into it, if these episodes have been helpful to you, if you could do me a huge favor and rate, review the podcast wherever you listen to it, give it a like and a thumbs up on YouTube if that's where you are tuning in. It really helps. Every little bit helps spread the word about how more women in midlife can rewild their lives with human design and the Gene Keys. So getting into a little bit about my story, I don't think I've shared too much on the podcast before. But prior to my work with Rewild by Design, we'll go back to the way back to the beginning. I grew up as an only child in Western New York. My parents did the best that they could at the time. I never really remember too much about scarcity, or I just do remember that, we weren't very well off, but also I don't ever remember being hungry or having food scarcity. And I spent a lot of time playing by myself. And as a projector, now I understand that was so supportive for me to, kind of be in the public and then come back out and need time to rest and be by myself. So in that growing up, I don't quite remember where I heard the message, but I remember thinking that in order to be accepted, I needed to be perfect. And when we look at my human design chart, there's some of that in there as well. But I really felt this pressure to perform and to be a high achiever. I tried to be an A student. I was a band geek. Growing up, I wasn't popular by any means. I was academic. You could find me in the library. Like summer times, I'd ride my bike to the park, and I would just sit and voraciously read books. And that was like my happy place. And fast forward, I went to college. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my life. Didn't have this deep desire. When I was a little girl, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to help animals. But then I actually had a internship at a vet hospital, and I saw what happened behind the scenes. And I said, that's not for me. So I went to school, and in college, and for anthropology of all things. So I said, okay, this is pretty interesting. I was learning about people, I was studying, and now reflecting back on being a projector, I understand I've always been deeply curious about humanity. So when I was going through school, I remember not consciously, but I know this was like this pattern that I didn't really have a lot of self-confidence, and I didn't feel really self-assured. I was this tiny, skinny, long legs, and didn't really quite fit in my body young woman. And I didn't have a lot, like I said, a lot of self-confidence. And I didn't put a lot of weight in owning who I was. And we won't get in too many details, but I let men in my life take advantage of me because I didn't have that self-love first. I ended up getting engaged while I was still in college, not really realizing I was more in love with the idea of being in love, and I didn't realize that till afterwards. So this is a lot of self-reflection over the years. But fast forward out of college, before we get there, I was a straight A student in college, the best I could, right? It's a big transition from high school to college, but I did the best I could. I continued band. I was a bassoonist of all things. And I went to a college that was known for being a music college, but I was a non-music major. So then I graduated early. Of course I did, right? High achiever, perfectionist. I graduated in 3.5 years, but I was burned the fuck out. I wanted to go to graduate school and maybe eventually a PhD in archaeology. And I wanted to be an archaeologist and study forever. But that just didn't happen. I went out into the real world. I got a temp job, and then I ended up as a financial planner. That was not my cup of tea. Fast forward maybe a few months after that, I ended up at another temp agency for $9 an hour, just filing paperwork and doing some basic data entry. Now, this was way back in the day. So they eventually offered me a full-time position, which I gladly accepted because I didn't really have much other choices in that town and city area where I lived. So I accepted it and I worked my way up that corporate ladder. I was a recruiter. First I was an on-site recruiter. I did, we had a staffing accounts where we would go to our clients and we would onboard our employees and check on them. We had an office at these locations. So that's what I did. And then I made my way up eventually to staffing manager, branch manager, and eventually towards the end of my career, I was we can call it a mid-level manager, right? I was an operations manager supporting the upstate New York region. And by this time, I had already had 2 children. I was married, had 2 children. I was pregnant with my 3rd child. And this is back in 2019. And it kind of came out of the blue, but all of a sudden we got an email stating we had to be on a mandatory meeting. I'm messing up the details because that was a foggy time. But let's say within an hour, we all had to be on an email. Mandatory. And my spidey senses were tingling and saying, oh, this is not good. So we find out whole companies restructuring their US operations and we were being let go. Thank you for your 16 years of service. You're gone. Here's your severance package. We had the opportunity to test into potentially, it felt like Hunger Games, honestly, to test into these positions of what was left. And I started listening to my intuition because by this time I was on my spiritual awakening journey outside of work and I was starting to listen to my intuition and something told me just take the severance and go. And luckily I did because even though I tested like 100% on that exam, quote unquote, I was not selected to stay in those positions, which was fine by me. But I was like 4.5, 5 months pregnant at the time. We all know, especially if you're in human resources, you're not supposed to discriminate against women who are pregnant, but it still happens. So I talked to my husband. I was going to take my severance, get unemployment, and figure it out. And at that time, I was so lucky that our unemployment office invited me into this program where I could start a business. And that was the first iteration of my former business. It was the Mindful Mom Life. And I was all into mindfulness and teaching other moms how to bring little pockets of mindfulness into their life. That set the foundation for my entrepreneurship journey. So all the while I was pregnant, I found that I was into these like crunchy moms groups. So I went into one of these groups and I saw some threads talking about this system called human design. I'd already been a little curious about astrology, so it piqued my interest. And I'm a lurker, not a commenter. So I just copied the link that some person dropped into the chat and I went there and I ran my chart. And I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of like astrology. You get your birth time information. When I saw it, I think I went to like one of the original source websites, and I won't name names here, but I felt really disempowered, to be honest. The first time I saw I was a projector and I had to wait for the invitation. And then I saw all of these symbols and colors and letters, and it didn't really make a lot of sense. So I put it to the side and I said, okay, that's interesting information, but it doesn't really help me right now. Truth be told, I don't think I was ready. My consciousness wasn't ready for that information at that time. And that's fine. Then fast forward a little bit longer, I was going and doing these personal development courses. I was getting coached by people, and human design was just this like in the back of my mind, this through line that I kept hearing in all of these groups. People were talking about human design. And this was like before human design became a little bit more mainstream. So it was still a little bit on the woo-woo side. But then I found the gene keys, and I kind of did it backwards because I went all in on the gene keys system. And you can listen to one of my previous episodes that talks about the gene keys and the journey of going and exploring your gene keys. But I found it so comforting, and it paired well with my mindfulness journey. I said, oh, it was about contemplation, and it was about these different frequencies. And there was something about the poetic language that Richard Rudd uses that just sucked me in, and I had to know everything about it. And so I became a Gene Keys guide. I got through all of the steps to guide others to learning more about their gene keys. And then I was bits and pieces going back to human design. And then I finally went all in and decided, well, if I'm going to do human design, I'm going to do it 100%. So I got certified with Karen Curry Parker in quantum human design, as well as the quantum alignment system. And those tools and that language in the quantum human design world felt so much more empowering. And it helped me really see myself for the first time. Before that, I didn't really have the language. Yeah, I knew these things about me, but I feel like learning human design in this way helped cultivate more compassion, more love for myself, and to kind of let myself off the hook, because I saw in the chart the pieces of this pressure that was running through me, this pressure of perfectionism. My conscious sun is in the gate 18. And I mean, that is all about, the lower expressions of that is turning that correction energy inward. And that's exactly what I found myself doing. But I didn't beat myself up about it. And that was a first, right? Before that, I had all of this pressure to be perfect. And now I realized I'm just turning that energy inward instead of trying to, or just for lack of a better term, figuring out how to make things better externally so we can have a more joyful experience as humans. So all in all, human design kind of gave me the pieces that maybe I felt like were missing, where previously I had tried to think my way through decisions instead of feeling and trusting that my intuition, I'm a splenic authority, my intuition is everything. And to trust that even when I don't have the concrete proof. And I'm still working on that. But really, things started to come together. My previous iteration of my business was called Embody Your Energy. And it was more about the tools and the intuitive tools and doing readings and doing angel Reiki sessions, energy healing. And I felt like I was kind of boxing myself in still. So that's why, with the help of my business coach, I stepped into this new version of me where I realized that I could just let my freak flag fly and really show other women that it is possible to be yourself and understand that human design is another tool to help you cultivate a greater expression of who you're here to be. And it's not just this nice to have information. It was information that validated what I was already feeling about myself. And like I said, that permission slip to really step into this version of me. And being in midlife now, I realized for so long, I played by the rules. And even in my chart, I'm not meant to play by the rules. I'm here to be a leader who is a little different and not in the traditional leadership sense. Really use that intuitive downloads that I get to help other people also step into who they're meant to be. So honestly, what changed after learning my human design is that, number one, I realized everybody needs to know this information, because even if you understand just a few pieces of your unique design, that's where the magic can start happening, because I visualize a door opening. And by learning your human design, you're opening that door for possibilities, for life to show you how good things can get. And especially in midlife, when we have done everything for everybody else for so many years, we've played by the rules, we have worn the masks to keep ourselves safe. Human design really, like I said, opens that door that we don't have to play that game anymore. It is safe to be who you are because your soul chose this expression, this configuration for your highest good. And the more you learn and trust, so not just learning, trusting and playing with your design, the more magic that can happen. And I know that sounds kind of out there, but it literally is true because the women that I speak with all the time, when they trust their human design, when they live it instead of just trying to study it, their lives change, their relationships. Maybe that other person hasn't changed, but they are able to put up better boundaries, or their parenting becomes easier because they understand what their children's designs are and able to parent each child in the way that that child needs to grow up and be their full expression as well. It's like this snowball effect. Or they're able to leave that dead end fuck ass job that is draining the shit out of them and step into this wild dream that they have put on the back burner because they said, well, when the kids get older. Well, the kids are older and out of the house. Now it's your time. And human design gives us that map to show us these are the things, these are my strengths. These are my areas of challenge and what will continue to meet me to help me grow. And these are the themes of purpose in my life. Purpose doesn't have to necessarily equal one thing in your life. Your purpose as a parent could be different from your purpose out in the work world. Or you have a 9 to 5, but yet your purpose is volunteering in your community. It looks different for everybody. Talking about human design, I really want to, number one, share it with as many women as possible because I fully believe that when more women are stepping into their power, that's when the world can change. And right now, the world feels like a really scary place. We have a lot of negativity, a lot of end stage capitalism happening, and conflict and war and hate going on in the world. But I firmly believe that if more people really stood in understanding who they are and stopped pretending to be something else and had more compassion and love for themselves, there will be this ripple effect out into the world. Midlife women, especially, I feel like we are on this cusp of we have seen so much and gained so much wisdom in our lives that now is the time for us to share it out with the world. I'm starting by leading by example, by doing this podcast, by coaching women, and by helping other women see that it is possible for you too. So I want to close this episode and just ask you, where are you currently still wearing those masks? And we're going to meet this with compassion and not judgment. So where are you still wearing the masks to help yourself fit in, or you think you'll be more palatable? What would happen if you dropped those masks? Okay. And you can journal on this, but we can get into, well, if I drop this mask, no one will like me. And then ask, but why? Or what will happen next? And get to the root of this. And this is a lot of the work that I do with my clients is we're going to get to the root of this. I'm not here to continuously pick the scab of things, but I feel like if we get to the root, we can pull out those through lines of the patterns that you have been repeating and really get into this next version of you that wants to be expressed in this second season of life. So that is it and what we've got today. If this episode has served you today, please leave a review. If you haven't already, if you want to start learning more about your human design and integrating what you're learning, start with my energy. It's called Your Energy Snapshot. It is your free chart as well as a 10-minute audio that's all about your human design type. I'll link that in the show notes and description. If you want to go deep and you're a self-study type of gal, check out the Decode Your Design Guide. That is over 60 pages that is personally tailored to your unique design. That is something you can come back to over and over again. And last but not least, if you have felt something in this episode or my content on social and you feel like this is the time for you to really embody who you came here to be and not just learn more about human design, and you want to be surrounded by other like-minded women who are on this journey together, check out the 9 Centers Mystery School. This is a place that we are deconditioning. We are rebirthing ourselves. We are reparenting ourselves. We are getting mystical. We're getting a little woo. We are doing the things. We are learning to trust ourselves again. And again, I'll link everything in the show notes. But until next time, thank you so much, and I love you. Well, that's it for this episode of Rewild by Design. I trust that you got what you needed here today, and just remember, you don't need another checklist. You need your own voice back. So go out, live a little louder, a little freer, and a hell of a lot more like yourself. And I'll see you next time.